Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
But who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers. Welcome. I am a board-certified criminal defense lawyer, which means I actually go across the street to the courthouse and try cases. I don't just sit there and hold your hand as you plead guilty. It's not what I do. Today, we are reacting to Dababy. Now, this is going to be kind of a cool episode where we talk about use of force and the level of force and the different types of situations that we can find ourselves in. Now, a 26-year-old man allegedly climbed the fence surrounding the property of Dababy in North Carolina. It's in a little town called Troutman. So let's listen to the 911 call, and then we'll talk about what they did and what he did.
Second.
This is the 911 call.
Federal County 911, what's the address?
First of all, you hear that guy screaming in the background? That's what happens when you go onto somebody's property that owns a firearm and shoots you.
He shot him in his leg. Y'all hear him? Get here and get him together. Okay. And what's going on there? Guy should have passed on my property. Hurry up and get here. Sir, what did you do? I shot him in his leg. Okay. And why did you do that? He's trespassing on my property, calling me by my name. I don't know what he's here for, what he's here to take, what he's here to do. But he's shot me with him now? He's neutralized until you guys get here. Sir, are you with him now? He's right here in front of me. Okay. Is he awake? Well, on the football field on my property. Sir, is he awake?
So, we're not going to play the whole thing, but you can get a flavor of... So, somebody trespassed on his property, and he shot him in his leg. Now, this brings up a couple of different things. There's a thing called self-defense, defense of yourself, defense of others, defense of dwelling, that kind of thing. There's also a concept in law called the castle doctrine, which most states have, and that's kind of a stand your ground kind of concept. And so what it means is you don't have to retreat from your own home. So if normally if you don't have a stand your ground state, you and I meet on the street, you try to fight me or whatever, and the only way I can claim to self-defense is if I reasonably took steps to retreat. You don't have to retreat if it wasn't, like you don't have to turn your back on somebody so they can shoot you in the back if it's not reasonable to do so. But if it's reasonable, you have a duty to retreat in a lot of cases, but not when you're in your own home for sure. And so if you're in your own home, you don't have a duty to retreat. That's number one. Number two, if you think somebody's on your own home, on your property, and they're about to commit a felony, you can use deadly force to repel that. That force has to be reasonable, however. Now, if you remember, Dababy had another case from 2018 where he was robbed, or this guy attempted to rob him at gunpoint. Big difference between these two cases, right? In this case, I don't think this guy was armed, and in the Walmart case, the guy was armed with a firearm. So let's just talk about the Walmart case, and that case got dismissed. And in the Walmart case, you've got force equals like force with like force. In other words, a firearm with a firearm, and he shot and killed the guy. That clearly was self-defense. Now, because there's no question in that case he reasonably feared of great bodily harm or death. In this case, it's a little bit different. He's got this guy coming onto his property, and I think in the 911 call he said he called out his name. And so he doesn't know what this guy is up to. And so the guy doesn't belong on his property. So... And he admits that he shot him in his leg. He told the dispatcher, "Why'd you do that?" He says he's trespassing on my property. Now this is where it goes to his state of mind. I don't know what he's here for, what he's here to take, what he's here to do. He's neutralized until you get here. Dababy also put out an Instagram post Chose not to take a fella's life the other day, and it felt great. Buddy ain't deserved to go. I step righteously, heal up, and live, my boy. Just don't bring your ass back around here. So this kind of goes to restraint. He shot him in the leg, and he didn't go any further than that. That goes to reasonableness. You know, you have the right to use deadly force, but it doesn't mean you have the right to execute somebody if they come onto your property. The problem I have with some of this is that one of the deputies says, I can confirm that the shooting did not occur inside the residence and that Mr. Kirk was on the property. That's Dababy. The investigation's still ongoing and they haven't provided any more information. The victim was transported to the hospital, to medical facility. So when you're sitting there and, somebody's trying to get onto your property, you do have the right to use force to repel that. It's your property, it's your home, it's your castle, right? But you have to justify the deadly use of force, and you have to reasonably believe that that force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily injury. So you just don't have the right to execute somebody, like I said. And in this case, he does say, I don't know what this guy was out to do. Now, while he uses a firearm, he doesn't use it to kill him. And you can see by his Instagram post that he did use some restraint. Shot him in the leg. He neutralized him until they got there. So I think it depends upon what kind of prosecutor you have. Any prosecutor could go ahead and make a case that it was unjustifiable use of force. The guy wasn't inside the home. The person probably wasn't armed, and if there are any, and was just maybe a fan trying to say hi, or whatever, but it seems to me that the way he used the firearm and the way he neutralized this person so they were no longer a threat, then immediately called 911 and told him everything that happened exactly the way it happened, I doubt that he'll get charged. It's very possible that he could, if some prosecutor thinks that use of deadly force was not justified, and then it certainly wouldn't be like an attempted murder or anything. It would be more like an aggravated assault with a firearm. However, he's on his property. See, now that you can't use deadly force. Let's talk about the Phil Spector. Remember Phil Spector? That person was a resident in his house. He was the aggressor. He shot the person. That's clearly not justified, and he's doing the rest of his life in prison. Where you are the initial aggressor, you cannot use deadly force. You can't claim self-defense or defense of your dwelling. And so this guy coming onto the property and closing the gap. Remember, I always talk about closing the gap. Whoever closes the gap generally loses the argument, loses the fight in court. And in this case, this guy climbed the fence and probably walking up to the house, and he loses. So I think Dababy is on pretty solid ground here. It's all about reasonableness. You see the difference between the two cases. He shot and killed the one guy who was armed, and he wounded and neutralized the other guy. And he's actually proud of the fact, and he should be, that he used restraint. If you look at Dababy's property, it's a pretty extensive property. I struggle with this a little bit because if he's got a really large property and he's somewhere, where he can call the cops and hold this guy without shooting, that may be one thing. But I just don't think a jury would convict somebody when you have an intruder coming onto your property. Are you supposed to wait until they hurt you or hurt somebody in your family? You have no idea what this guy is doing. You have no idea if they're armed. All you know is that they're invading your space. All you know is that they're they're trespassing, and you don't know what their intent is. So I know in some states, if you believe somebody's about to commit a felony, you can use deadly force. to reasonably stop that felony from happening. And that is kind of what happened here. If he thinks he's about to burglarize his home, that's a felony, and he shot him in the leg. And then but he didn't go any further than that. There was a case in northern Minnesota where this guy's house kept getting burglarized, and he was tired of it. He was just flipping tired of people breaking into his house. So he parked his car down the street to make people think he was not home. Then he waited in the basement. These two young kids broke into his house, went down the stairs. He shoots the first one in the leg. She falls down and lands at the bottom of the stairs. He shoots her again. And then he shoots her right under the chin, and he called it a good finishing shot. And then he shot the other guy. That is not a justifiable use of force. That's called execution. You can't do that. So you juxtapose that situation that I just gave you with what Dababy did. Dababy shoots him in the leg and neutralizes him. Calls the cops and say, "Come here and pick up your man." There's something, I don't know. That shows me he's a responsible gun owner. That shows me that he protected himself and his family and whoever lives there, and he did so in a reasonable fashion. I don't think that he's going to get charged. You get the wrong prosecutor and they want to make a name for them. No, I charged Dababy. I don't think that's going to happen in this case, especially because it's North Carolina. So keep that in mind. If you have a firearm, use it judiciously, and hopefully you'll never have to use it. But if you're in your own home, you don't have to retreat. But it doesn't give you the right to just come out and execute somebody. It does give you the right to use deadly force if you think you're in fear of imminent bodily harm or death. So, and that's kind of what the standard is. So, this has been just a quick analysis of a couple of good examples of using deadly force to its ultimate conclusion and using deadly force in a restrained way. And I think that those two juxtapositions really highlight how we should use a firearm. And I have no quarrels with what Dababy did in either case. But it'd be nice if he wouldn't have had to use his gun at all. So I'm Bruce Rivers, Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter. Sign up for Patreon. Spread the word. And we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.